thank you for joining us for this session about confronting a new challenge we face, monkeypox. Moderating the discussion will be Dr. Ayman El-Mohandes, Dean of the City University of New York Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy, and a Research America board member. And he'll be joined in conversation by Dr. Demetre Daskalakis, National White House Monkeypox Response Deputy Coordinator. So Ayman, I'm thrilled to turn the program over to you. And thanks for being with us.
Many thanks. Thank you very much, Demetre. Such a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today. And I think the viewers will be reassured by your input and by your knowledge. And the first question, actually, I wanted to share with you is my personal concern and the concern of many around me, both scientists and the lay audience, as to, what is this coincidence of having two pandemics, one perhaps more severe than the other, but consecutive pandemics and COVID followed by monkeypox. And is that really a coincidence? What's going on? Is there a new reality that we should brace ourselves for? What are your thoughts on that?
So Ayman, thank you so much for moderating this. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'll start by saying, I think that these two events are unlinked. So I'll start by saying that relation between COVID-19 and monkeypox. These have different trajectories, but I do think it's important to remember that emergent infections are a reality of what we're seeing. And though these are not linked directly, I think that the possibility of other emergent infection is something that requires us to, really be on guard and really speaks to the importance of the infrastructure of global and domestic public health to be able to respond to them. So though not linked directly, so COVID and monkeypox not linked directly, I think that in general, the possibility of emergent infections in a global world where travel is so easy. I mean, we are all on this Zoom and we're all over the world and we're moving around, as well as some of the other sort of ecological realities of what's happening in the world could potentially, really lead to other emergent infections. Though these aren't linked, having the surveillance and the ability to respond to them remains important, especially as we see these emerging infections occurring in our global reality.
Yes, indeed. We've heard some rumors about the fact that the new generation in West Africa, not having been immunized against smallpox since it's a disease that's been eradicated, could have been a situation where monkeypox reappeared amongst younger people in West Africa, and then this transmission. But what is the current thinking on this unanticipated migration of a viral threat? Has it been documented before, and what do you think the future holds for us?
Yeah, no, I think there are, I think historically, lots of, or many instances of viral threats that move beyond their normal geographic borders. So, I mean, where I come from when I'm not doing monkeypox is HIV. And so thinking about HIV as a viral threat that's now 42 years old, at least from the perspective of our awareness of it in the US, I think that really has a trajectory that's not dissimilar of sort of what could have been a zoonosis or zoonosis related disease that then moves to populations of humans and then moves beyond its original global confines. And so I think we have that. I think that there's many others that are on the list that are potential threats. So thinking about Ebola and other of Zika and other of the challenges that we've seen, I think that with a truly global world, we have examples in the past and now have examples currently. I think that the expectation is to have a level of preparedness for these to happen because it's happened for decades.
Surely, and as you pointed out, we have seen several of these, including Ebola, including SARS, and including MERS. And so the question that remains in people's minds is, what is the current thinking of whether this particular virus, the monkeypox virus, could become endemic in the United States, and what would that mean for us in terms of vaccines to the wider population and protecting everyone?
So I'll start by saying one of the principal missions that we have here at the White House with the monkeypox response team is to really work to prevent endemicity of this virus in the U.S. With that said, we do not live in isolation. And so thinking about us as that global community, as we are seeing improvements in our cases of monkeypox with a deceleration in many parts of the country, I think what we're going to see in my midterm crystal ball is that we will have potentially a decrease in the sort of level of outbreak, and that we will look a little bit more like a traditional sort of monkeypox outbreak where we have occasional clusters, many of which will be terminal. For example, I think when you look at transmission outside of the population of gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men, many of the sort of cases that have been identified usually result in an end, in a terminal chain. So it ends. So I think that as we see natural disease, natural infection causing immunity, vaccination, as well as some behavioral change, controlling the outbreak, I think we'll be seeing more sporadic clusters of this infection. With that said, though, the importance of really thinking about this the global monkeypox outbreak is important, because ultimately, introductions and reintroductions could potentially happen in the U.S. So though I think we will be working really hard to make sure that this is not something that is consistently and endemically transmitted in the country, I think we need to have a very clear awareness that we live in a global community, and our efforts on the ground here need to also be supplementing global efforts.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. But monkeypox is a virus that is known and similar to its family member, smallpox. The United States already had protective vaccines ready. Relative to that level of preparedness, are we really ready for other viral outbreaks, especially if there are preparedness gaps? What would it take to close those gaps for viruses that may emerge of an unknown nature or unprecedented presence within our population?
So I'll just start by saying that this monkeypox outbreak has been unprecedented in terms of how it's transmitting. So we were seeing transmission through primarily sexual encounters, and also some of the challenges of not necessarily having a full view of every contact. So that strategy, I think, was challenged and required pivot into sort of different approaches to address the outbreak. So I'll say that the level of preparedness is, especially for viruses like this, where we do have countermeasures, I think is in place, but also the need to be nimble and move when you're surprised or when the game changes based on how even a known infection acts. So this is not sort of what people expect out of a monkeypox outbreak, both in the social dynamics of how the virus transmitted, but also in the epidemiologic dimension of how it was moving. So being someone who works in public health, I think that the way to address preparedness gaps is always to make sure that public health is adequately resourced to be able to respond to outbreaks. And so whether there's a countermeasure or not, wherever it exists, the implementation really requires a public health, and I mean that from the perspective of both governmental and also the extension of public health to the partners that are so important to executing the important work to control outbreaks, whether they're chronic ones like HIV or more acute ones like monkeypox, really requires a ongoing investment. So, when everything is intense, when there's a lot of disease activity, there's a high level of concern, and then resources disappear. And then that tends to happen as we see decreases in the epi curve. And so I think that the lesson is that you keep your foot on the gas pedal, even when you see declines in outbreaks, and also have a level of preparedness for the future. And so I think, thinking about monkeypox, that for us really means focusing on the supplemental funding that was requested from Congress. So that's going to be really important, because though we've seen a lot of vaccination in early adopters, now every vaccine and every shot in an arm costs more and is more work, and requires the support to be able to bring us over the finish line of at least some level of immune protection domestically, while we also work globally.
I must say, Demetre, that these words coming from the White House couldn't be better music to my ears. And obviously, we all agree with you in that regard. You had mentioned the relationship between monkeypox and sexual encounters. I just needed to make sure that the audience hears that monkeypox is not a sexually transmitted disease. It occurs during sexual encounters because of the intimate contact between two individuals. Certain outbreaks of monkeypox have caused up to 10% case fatality rates in other situations. And how does a viral threat like monkeypox become deadly? And have we seen the same level of risk in the United States? And what are we anticipating?
So I'll start by saying that we've not seen this the same level of risk, nowhere even close, in terms of mortality expected from other monkeypox outbreaks. There are a couple of factors. So one factor is clade 2, which is the clade that we're dealing with, tends to cause a milder course of disease. So that is at least one piece. Another important part is that, I think that the level of immunocompromise that we have in the United States, at least specifically in the population that's overrepresented, though it exists, is potentially less than some other parts of the world. Thinking about co-infection with HIV, I think that there are definitely data out there that show that people with HIV have more severe outcomes globally, and those can include mortality. Domestically, we are seeing some people with more symptomatic disease. So in a recent MMWR released by CDC, there was a tendency for people living with HIV to have more of the painful manifestations of disease, like the rectal symptoms and the oropharyngeal symptoms. So that's there. But thankfully, we have not seen a high level of mortality based on, I think, two factors: the baseline health of the population, as well as the fact that the clade that we're dealing with is not associated with as high a level of mortality.
Yes, thank goodness for that. And I hope it will continue in the same direction. We know that viruses can cause long-term health impacts, and there's a lot of research now along the lines of long COVID and long-term effects of COVID exposure, HPV as well, causing cancer. Do we know if monkeypox can cause long-term health problems?
So I always start by saying what we know today could change tomorrow. So that's a really important sort of piece of sort of risk messaging around infections like this. But it seems as if the majority of complications that are more long-term with monkeypox relate to the scarring, and there could potentially be stricture in areas if there is infection sort of in the oropharynx or in the rectum. And so I think we're going to need to sort of understand the natural history of the disease, and that will take time. But I think that in terms of the long-term side effects, most are related to the scarring that we think. And again, that could change as we learn more and we have more experience with this unprecedented outbreak.
Demetre, thank you so much. There couldn't have been a better person to discuss this with today. And with that, we end this segment on monkeypox in the United States. I hope it was useful and brought some light to this important issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.